It's amazing how it takes folks sometimes 6 months to get things together. But apparently, in North Carolina, we have found out that we are the third fastest growing state behind Texas and Florida. That came out from the Census Bureau and some of the things that they found out as far back as July 1st of last year. But they did say that a lot of people, and particularly people from right here in the United States, are moving right here to North Carolina. So North Carolina has got that distinction. And like I said, we are the third fastest growing state in the area. I'm sure that Nick and Chris will be interested in hearing about those figures and all along those lines, because that was one of the things that I saw that was quite interesting and quite good news. Now, on the other side of that, we do hear that a lot of economists, you got to love those economists, folks, are saying that 2023 is not going to be the greatest year in the world. So hopefully they're wrong and all of that. But a difficult year ahead for the global economy is set to hit some countries harder than others. And like I said, at some point we'll see Steve Rao possibly coming in, and maybe he's talking to the politicians since he's up there in DC. He did say he might pop in on this particular day from DC, that Tower of Power area and all of that. So we're going to see if he pops in. Who knows? Maybe he scored an interview with one of those politicians. I know that he's friends with Wiley Nichols and others. As a matter of fact, that's the reason for him going up there. But on this particular day, yours truly is captain this ship, or captain this plane, as he likes to call it, and all of that. So for those of you that don't know me in 2023, this is Mark Lee, and I'm glad to be the one that is, piloting the ship on this particular day. But with 2023 upon us, many bankers, economists, and business leaders have cautioned to brace for a global economic contradiction that will send many countries plunging into recession. As much as one third of the global economy could enter recession territory this year, according to the IMF director, Kristalina Georgieva. And she said that over the weekend, warning of a tough year ahead for the world. Georgieva said simultaneous contradictions in three major economies, the US, the EU, and China, will be the driving force behind a global recession, as wealthy nations will be unable to escape economic slowdowns. But with the lingering effects of the pandemic and the Ukraine war continuing to drag down growth for the rest of 2023, some developed countries are set to fare far worse than others. They're saying that UK is already facing a deeper and more prolonged recession than any nation in the G7, a global political policy forum representing seven of the world's most advanced economies, as around 4/5 of the economists say the UK will be burdened by a much longer recession than its peers, according to a Financial Times survey that was released on Monday. And the Financial Times polled 101 UK-based economists on the economic outlook for the country compared with other G7 countries, finding that a clear majority of economists surveyed believed that the UK is in a much more severe economic contradiction that will take longer to recover from. And of course, there's also some things going on in China as well. And of course, there's that whole war over there between Russia and the Ukraine. But yes, some of the Chinese economic things, including their lifting of their COVID policies, a lot of folks are thinking that that is the reason that they might be heading into some trouble economically as well. Now, I don't claim to be the economic expert, so I'm going to hear from some of my economic experts on their thoughts on that matter as well. But that was one of the things that I did hear. On the other side of that, and I guess it's the flip side, stocks were opening higher on the first trading day of 2023. So maybe that's a good thing that the stocks are open higher on that. And of course, China is not too happy with some of the policies given by some of the other nations, because China is blasting as unacceptable the COVID curbs on travelers coming from their country. And that was according to one of the places that we sometimes air to, none other than Al Jazeera. So they were saying that they were not too pleased with that and all along those lines. So that's some of the things that are going on in the world. We're also hearing that McCarthy is heading to a grueling speaker vote with his fate in limbo. And some people are wondering what kind of impact that will have on the Republican Party as they prepare for the 2024 elections and all in that way. So that's some of the things that I am seeing in the news. I'm also seeing, because you got to love it, there's always new state laws. And of course, they are oftentimes put into effect at the beginning of a year. So there is some talk about the new laws that are all over the place and all in that way. And then some other things that I'm seeing in the news that folks might be interested in are a Idaho murder suspect was pulled over not once, but twice on a cross-country race home with his dad. It seems to me that if you've been pulling them over, they should have been already doing some things in that lingo realm as well. But hey, what do I know? I do have friends in law enforcement, but did not know that until I just saw that in the coverage of that particular case. And Russia is planning to exhaust Ukraine with prolonged attacks, according to Zelensky. So that is one of the things that we're seeing, is that there's going to be some prolonged attacks. I was actually reading an article where they were saying that if Putin is having ill health, and there were some concerns around his cough that he had on his New Year's Day statement, what do some of the other leaders look like? And some of these leaders look like they could be scarier than Putin, believe it or not, and all in that way. But I did see some things on there, and there was actually a profile on a couple of them that I read, and I was going like, because I think one of them runs the Wagner Group, and there was another one that was the leader of the attack on one of the Ukrainian cities, and they are saying that both of those could be who we have as leadership out of that country should Putin fall due to ill health or an attack or something along those lines. So it'll be interesting to see what folks have to say about that, including my military expert, who is also my data expert, none other than Chris Greco. So that's some of the things that I was seeing in the news. And like I said, I may give some further explanation of those, including those new state laws, in a second or two. But in the meantime, we're going to bring up those lovely guests of ours and see what they've got to say about some of the things that I was just talking about. I think I'll start with Chris Greco, since I brought up something that had to do with the military and all along those lines, and then I'll bring up Nick Palveda and others. But what is your thoughts? Like I said, I just happened to stumble across an article, I think it was early this morning, and it profiled some of the Russian leadership, and I was going like, whoa, we think Putin is bad. These guys sound like they could be worse.
Oh, yeah, the Wagner Group. And as a matter of fact, Ukraine has killed a couple Wagner Group, according to Ukrainian news, killed a couple of Wagner Group members. So that's probably a good thing. We're talking about there is a very right-wing membership in Ukrainian armed forces that is fighting against the Russians. And then you got this contracting type group, right wing in Russia, that's trying to take charge of that. So I'll tell you, it's really, really interesting how that situation is happening. And I'll tell you, I got to show you a couple things on the share screen.
This is going to bring in our other folks as well.
You bet. So this is this line here shows the attack on January the 3rd by Ukraine, and this is the village they hit. And it was only about 461 kilometers, but if you go into miles, we're talking here like 286 miles just south of Moscow. And currently, they hit a place called Makivka, and they caused 63 Russian casualties. And now the Russians are getting upset about that, which I think is just so interesting, how the Russians are upset about the Ukrainians killing 63 members of the Russian armed forces, and the Russians have been killing, Ukrainians, civilians and whatever else they can get a hold of. So it's so interesting how that, and according to the news, it's grief and anger in Russia over soldiers killed by Ukraine strike. And I sit back and I go, really? Really? You guys are upset about 63 casualties, and the Russians have been just bombing the hell out of Kyiv and Lviv and the rest of those areas, and for whatever reason, the Russians aren't getting angry about that? Or, well, hey, good, we just killed a Nazification over in Ukraine. So I just thought that was it. And to show you, here's Makivka. Basically, it's in Ukrainian territory now. Yeah, it's in a oblast, bullcrap region area, that supposedly is Russian by Chris? Whatever. But just amazing to me. That's
Chris. Good morning. I just have a question for you. How long is this going on? This war with Russia and Ukraine?
So it's been going on since. Well, ask Sasha. This thing the conflict has been going on for what? Decades, centuries? Basically, it's been going on forever.
The current one now with Russia. It's going on, a year?
February 24th will be a year.
The year. Why does one side have the power just to end it already, as opposed to playing dodgeball forever?
The people, you know, okay. let's get down to basic. Let's get down to basics here. All right. So Sasha, I made your help with this. So basically, it goes like this, Lee. Let me try to make you understand. Eastern Europe is not like the United States. It's this hatred of differences. Okay, and that's just the way it goes. Ukraine has been basically used as a puppet from Russia for basically centuries, and they have. And all of a sudden now they've gone back and they've formed themselves an independent country. And it's the same thing with Serbs and Croats and Kosovars and all that. You know what I mean?
The current conflict now, the
Yeah.
fighting back and forth. Does one side have the power just to end it already, as opposed to a pissing match that's not going to end?
It's gonna go on forever. It's gonna go on until one country. Sasha says it best. I'll leave it to Sasha. It's going to go on until Putin is dead or removed, or the entire country of Ukraine are ashes. We're
obligated to finance that with no accountability.
Well, I agree with you on that, the accountability aspect and everything else. But the thing is, if we pull out, if the United States says we're not going to give any more money to Ukraine, that doesn't mean that they'll fight with freaking pitchforks or whatever they can get their hands on. Just because we don't give them Patriot missiles doesn't mean they're not going to fight. And the thing is, even if Russia goes in and takes Ukraine, even if they go in and they say we're victorious, we take Ukraine, there is going to be a partisan movement in Ukraine that is going to kill Russians until such time as the Russians finally, like Afghanistan, will finally pull out and say, okay, we've had enough.
Ukraine, United States, and the world just to end it already?
What's that?
Doesn't it behoove us just to end it already?
How can we again? How can we end this? How can we possibly end this? The only place we can end it.
Of Russia now forever.
Well, the thing is that Russia is playing this game. Oh, I think again, Sasha says it best. Is that until the U.S. gets involved, totally involved with troops and whatever else, and says, okay, we've had enough. We're going to go into Russia. We're going to either put a wall up, or we're going to do something that is going to stop this so that Ukraine can rebuild and do whatever. Russia, you put one more shell in there, and we're going to put a shell into Moscow, and you're done. So just stop doing what you're doing and pull out. But the U.S. is not going to do that. Look, the U.S. is not going to do it, and NATO's not going to do it.
Hey,
so,
Chris,
I mean, we're stuck.
Chris, I just came up with a unique idea. I think Sasha might actually like this idea, because I said I was going to mention some of these laws that are new and in place around the United States. And one of them is that several states have actually made sports betting legal. Sports betting became legal in Massachusetts at the end of January.
Anyway.
And is now legal in Ohio, where it is subject to a 10% state tax, with the money going to public school. Ohio is rolling out legal betting on college and pro sports, and Massachusetts is going to ease into sports betting at the state's 3 casinos by the end of the month. And there are 2 other states that have already joined in. Tennessee's joining, California's joining. So I'm wondering, do we need to have bets placed on when the war will end, since it's becoming so legal in other states?
I am so glad to see the land of the free have almost as many liberties and freedoms as the rest of us in Western countries had 50 years ago. I just want to come back to Russia, if you don't mind. I will just say that, and again, Sasha teaches me a lot more about the Ukraine than I ever hoped to learn on my own. And I know that it's not a direct comparison, but if anything that powerful countries can learn from Vietnam and from Afghanistan is that you cannot go into a country whose citizens don't want you there and expect to win. Because what does winning look like? You might be able to overthrow government, you might be able to occupy it, but you'll never win the hearts of the people. And they will always defy you until you have just run out of resources and your citizens have run out of will to continue to occupy those nations. But for the sake of the audience, Chris, could you just expand? I know who they are, but could you just expand on who the Wagner Group is? Because I think that a lot of people wouldn't necessarily be aware of them. They've seen the headlines in the news, but they may not actually know who this group of mercenaries are. You're muted, Chris.
Yeah, Chris.
You're still muted. Chris, you're muted.
Chris, you're muted.
Gee, all that great information that was just gone. Anyways, so Wagner, whatever they want to call it, is basically it's a mercenary group, right? And I mean, it's unbelievable that these guys are just basically, or whatever, are sitting there saying, basically that it's talking about different aspects, and it's Russian. I mean, these people have fought in Georgia. Not Georgia, U.S., which probably they will sooner or later, but Georgia, Georgia, former Russia, right? And they've gotten killed. They've gotten killed in Georgia. Georgia killed a ton of them. The Georgians. I mean, I'll tell you, I would not want to go against the Georgians. In fact, if Ukraine was smart, they would kind of, get a pact together with Georgia. They'd probably kick the crap out of whatever they could put against them. But these things have been around. Wagner Group has been around for whatever, right? And the thing is that this they assisted separatist forces in Donetsk and Luhansk. I mean, the guy Dmitry Utkin is the leader of this thing. He's been photographed with Nazi tattoos. I mean, wait a minute now. Oh my gosh, what's Chris saying? He's saying that Wagner is a Nazi group. Well, let's see. Wagner, that was a big deal. Hitler loved Wagner. But anyways, bottom line is that there's this guy who's basically affiliated with the Nazis, a mercenary group fighting with the Russians to denazify Ukraine. So I just think the whole thing is just like a comedy of errors. You couldn't write a movie like this.
Chris, the irony of this situation is the United States got half of the Nazis and they created the CIA. And then the other half went to the Russians and they created the Wagner Group.
Dan, you're exactly right. As a matter of fact, if it weren't for the Nazis, we would have never gone to the moon. If it weren't for the Nazis, including Wernher von Braun, who was a V2 guy in Nazi Germany, they captured him before the Russians captured him and basically brought him back. And then they developed all these spacecraft. And the thing was that part of Wernher von Braun's group, the one guy, did experiments, including ejection seats and everything else, on live individuals that they had captured. They were from concentration camps or wherever, and they were doing live stuff on that, and they brought those results back to the U.S. And the statue of this Nazi was in front of Brooks Army Medical Center for a long time until they finally took it down. So I mean, it's interesting. How you're right. You're exactly right. Nazis are everywhere, right? And I just think it's hilarious, Sasha. I got to hear your take on this,
Sasha, because like I said, when I read this article, it was actually 2 days ago. They were painting this gentleman that could be the one that takes over. Prigozhin, I think is his name, and everything as being making Putin almost look mild. So I'm going like, well, if he's the one that is going to be taken over, should Putin die or be killed or whatever. Don't we run the risk of like it being an even worse war? Because like I said, I just stumbled across this article and I was going like, this guy sounds even scarier than Putin. And I think Putin is very scary and everything, but you are more in touch with that part of the world. So should we be concerned about people like the Wagner Group and folks like this gentleman who apparently is having some tit-a-tat wars with some of his leadership to put himself in position should Putin die, whether naturally or through being assassinated or whatever? But I'm going like, this guy sounds worse. He sounds like he might want to push the button even quicker and all of that. But I was just wondering,
we got the same problem in the United States, right? Yeah, what do we have? We have Biden, then we have Harris, and then it goes downhill.
Well, yeah, but to be fair, Dan, I don't think that there's any comparison between the nuttiest of the American politicians and Putin. And when you're answering Mark's question, if I can just put a follow-on question to that. I actually had the opportunity a long time ago to meet Putin, and for whatever reason, it didn't actually happen because I was busy with other things. And the person that I knew that knew him had known him from when he was the mayor of St. Petersburg. And so that's sort of how he always referred to him. They were apparently fairly well known. I just wanted to ask you, was Putin always crazy, or is this a new development? He's just sort of flown off the rails because of all this time he's had in power. What's going on with the man?
It all goes to the old saying of some politicians that we have to find a way to save Putin's face. And otherwise, there could be some developments, and there could be somebody even worse than Putin. First of all, to be worse than Putin is a real challenge. I'll tell you that Putin already exceeded everything what's done Stalin and Hitler. What Putin's doing now to Ukraine, it's unheard of in a world civilization history, because even Hitler never done something what's Putin doing now. For example, Hitler, let's see, even my hometown of Odessa, it was left by Red Army, and Germans occupied, and later on they put Romanian in charge of Odessa. There was a military regime for sure. There were some people that had to show up and they had to register everybody or so on, but there were no such atrocities as indiscriminately killing civilians as what Putin is doing now. Because all this firepower, all those rock missiles attacks, he could direct that against frontline Ukrainian fighters. He's not doing that because on the front line, there is no progress that Russians can do. In fact, all they're waiting until upcoming Ukrainian assault that can happen now anytime soon. The Ukrainians are collecting their troops and very carefully preparing, because the life of each Ukrainian soldier matters, and they're trying to attack Russians and lose as little possible troops. Now, concerning to information about 63 killed, it depends who does the counting. Apparently, the real number is more 600 than 63, because Russians were stupid enough as to put their soldiers right next to the ammunition places where they store all this ammunition and so on. So Ukrainians, they were not planning to kill so many Russians and so on. Their goal was to destroy the ammunition. And so many Russians couldn't even believe that they stationed Russian soldiers right where their ammunition warehouses were. It's just incredible stupidity on the Russian part. It's so what Ukrainians did is they just brought 3 or 4 HIMARS, and they just destroyed this ammunition warehouse, and with that they also killed about 600 and counting Russian troops. Now, the Russians are very upset about that. Okay, and then what are you going to do there? They're already testing the world by this indiscriminate bombardment of Ukrainian cities, killing their so-called brothers and sisters. As they say, Ukrainians, they're nothing but brothers and sisters. So you're killing your own brothers and sisters, and you're destroying infrastructure of cities that you were planning to bring over to Russia. The plan was to change the government in Kiev, get the friendly politicians there, and then make it Ukraine part of Russia, because also Ukrainians are actually Russian. They're the same nation, they're the same brother and sister, and so on. So what Putin is doing now, he's testing the world opinion, how long the world will be look at indiscriminate killing of innocent civilians, including children, including women, including older people, and so on. I think that if you remember the Second World War, United States very reluctantly entered the actual war only after Pearl Harbor. Before that, they were helping England withstand the German attacks, but they did not enter the war. the war. They did that only after Pearl Harbor. So there could be some kind of event that will trigger the involvement of NATO and United States.
Sasha?
One thing is obvious to me is that if there is a time, that time is now to absolutely kill Russian war machine and get rid of the world of 3 generations living in the danger of nuclear war.
Sasha, Sasha, thank you for sharing your thoughts. What is Zelensky's concern now with the free press that he wants to crack down on? Could you better explain that? I don't fully understand.
Explain me what free press you're talking about.
Zelensky is saying that they want to, let me just find it real quickly. He's signing a law in effect to restrict free press and press freedoms in Ukraine. He's passing they just passed the bill.
Wait a sec. Ukraine is at war. Have you ever seen a country in war that would allow free press? I never heard about something like this.
Well, we have that over here. What's that, Dan?
The United States did it all the time. They embedded reporters and gave away our location, and CNN and all the others. We were stupid until Trump came along and kicked the reporters out of the embedded troops and cleaned up business.
But we never stopped the reporters from reporting what they had access to, did we? No, we didn't. No. Is hammered down on the free press. Zelensky was not a very popular president at all when prior to the war. This has made him. I don't know if he still is popular among the people. I don't know, but I mean they seem to be they seem to be rallying around something.
Hey, Dan, and I think Chris was going to make a point as well. But one of the questions I've been curious about is I think both Chris and Nick have brought up the fact of there needing to be more money coming from other places other than the United States. The United States is giving a lot of money to the war effort in the Ukraine and other things along those lines. But now, as I reported earlier, the UK is concerned about a economic downturn, a recession, but according to some people and everything. So I'm wondering, is there going to be any will among the people to want to go and give money from, say, the UK, these other countries?
Yeah. Okay, Mark. So let's talk about this. Let's talk about this from an example point of view. Let's say I have a light bulb, okay, and that light bulb is shining on a solar cell. Mm-hmm. The solar cell is wired to the light bulb. So as long as the light bulb is providing energy to the solar cell can provide energy to the light bulb. What's happening is, as a result of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, this is a result of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, that light bulb is getting dimmer. And because it's getting dimmer, the energy from this solar cell is not able to feed the energy to that light bulb, which means it just gets dimmer and dimmer and dimmer, and then it goes out. So what's happened is that because of the invasion of Ukraine from Russia, basically money has gone into Russia, Ukraine. Resources have gone into Ukraine. The energy aspect. This is Europe's fault. This is Europe's being a dumbass. Is that they relied on Russia for all their energy needs. All of a sudden, their energy is now cut off. Guess what's happening in Germany? They're firing up coal plants. All things. And where are they getting the coal from? Where are they getting coal from? Well, Ukraine used to provide the coal, but now they can't provide the coal. So now they can't provide wheat. They can't provide a lot of things that Ukraine was, it was the breadbasket of frickin' Europe, and now it's basically ashes. So now, because of all this is happening, Estonia is providing. If you do a per capita of what we're doing of assistance to Ukraine, Estonia is providing a bunch of resources because of their per capita. So Estonia is actually providing the most per capita assistance to Ukraine. U.S. is right there with Canada. And Canada hasn't provided all that much, but per capita, because they have what 200, I forget what they got. They got like 24 million or something in
35.
Canada. It's like 320 million. So per capita aspects. So that's what's happening.
Chris,
Russia's providing the bullcrap. Russia has caused all the entire aspect, the entire reason why countries are basically on their heels at this point in time is because of Russia. And the Europeans' dependence on Russia, which was stupid to begin with, and now they're suffering.
You have to bring into the top there is China and India.
I would like to make you to be aware.
Why is it that Russia, use the example you're using, right? The light bulb shining on the solar panel won't be efficient enough to keep regenerating the light bulb, right? So it needs an external or impetus of energy. And that's what the Ukraine needs. But meanwhile, for all of this rubbish that the sanctions, the West is going to put all these sanctions on Russia, the countries in the European Union are still buying their oil and they're still buying their gas. And they've said something like, we will pay 80% of the worldwide price. Like, Russia doesn't care. It's not like this is a free market in Russia.
Right.
So, they're getting all of this money from Europe, which is continuing to exacerbate the problem.
It's not continuing any longer. Your information is outdated. It's not continuing any longer. Europe is no longer purchasing Russian oil and gas.
Right.
Right now, it's stopped. Now I would like to remind.
No, that's not true, Sasha.
And it doesn't matter. China and India are buying oil.
It's already stopped by now. It's already stopped. India, China is a different story, but Europe
India, China is a big
purchased
story.
Russian oil and gas. Now I would like to mention something very important. The missiles that are hitting Ukraine these days, the warplane, and some of them were destroyed by Ukrainians in cities. Engels and the other one. They were all made in Ukraine prior to 1994. These missiles were made in Ukraine. The warplanes, Russian Tu-95 and Tu-204, they were built in Ukraine. So thank you to the brilliant 1994 Budapest Memorandum, which U.S. coerced Ukraine to enter and guaranteed its territories. This is nothing but crap. And the reason that Ukraine is such a precarious situation, being attacked by much stronger and bigger neighbor, it's a result of U.S. foreign policy. Thank you.
Hey, speaking of U.S. foreign policy, I was actually going to go ahead, Dan.
No, you're welcome.
Yeah, but speaking of U.S. foreign policy and of other countries, and Chris is going to love this one because I'm going to pivot just slightly to some other news story. But there is a representative in the U.S. that is under some serious investigations and all of that being Representative-elect George Santos. And apparently when he takes his seat on Tuesday, he's going to do so under the shadow of active investigations by federal and local prosecutors. But guess what? There's another country that is also going to jump into this because an older criminal case may be more pressing. Apparently the fine folks in Brazil have decided that they want to revive a fraud case against Mr. Santos and will seek his formal response according to prosecutors on Monday.
And so just for the record,
they can find them. Now they're going to go find them, and now they're going to go after them.
Mark, Santos is gay. I just want to make sure that everyone understands. Santos is a gay. He put himself out there as a gay candidate. He's gay, and it's interesting now that the LGBTQ community is saying no, he's not. He's really not gay. And it's really funny. I think this is hilarious. And I think this is how things change. Like, it's kind of like, oh, he's gay. Yay. Oh, he's great. But he's Republican. Oh, I can't be gay. So all of a sudden now they're backing off of this whole situation about this guy is gay. Oh, no, he's not gay. He can't be gay. He's a Republican, first of all, and he lies. He lies like a rug. I don't understand why, we bring him into this community. So there we go.
Well,
I just thought I'd throw that out there.
I'm going to have to jump in here. Sorry, Lee. I'm going to have to jump in here, Chris.
You go first.
So, I personally, I agree with you. I think that there should be equality, and I think that we need to lock up more LGBTQ people. We need to see more of them in jail. But this is the year of pride, and the great Sydney City decided that what we should do is have a rainbow fireworks display over the Sydney Harbour Bridge. Now, in fairness, it was absolutely gorgeous. But I can tell you that what I have done in the privacy of my bedroom has never been celebrated by my country. My country has never been so enamored by my bedroom activity that they have chosen to celebrate it and put fireworks on the bridge. However,
not in mine either.
I will say that in the interests of talking about our sexuality, and making sure that everybody knows what we do, because it's the most important thing. I do want to read an article from news.com.au that talked about something that happened in Scarborough. Not Scarborough in Australia, but Scarborough back in Mother England. New Year's Eve fireworks cancelled. This is for you, Nick, sitting backstage. He's going to be like this in a minute. Because of a masturbating walrus. A town was forced to cancel its New Year Eve's fireworks after a giant walrus lobbed in its harbour and put on a show of its own. Thor the walrus put on an X-rated show of his own after his arrival put an end to the New Year's Eve's firework display. As huge crowds gathered to see the Arctic mammal lounging at a harbour, council officials axed the light show so that he wouldn't be disturbed. Very courteous of them. But parents had to cover their children's eyes when the 2-ton beast appeared to perform a solo sex act on the slipway on Saturday. Footage of Thor's unfamily-friendly performance in Scarborough, North Yorks, went viral on social media. One wag joked, "The walrus misunderstood. Are you coming to Scarborough Fair?" And another posted that David Attenborough missed that part in Blue Planet. So it's been a great start to the year, and I think we should have more sex on the TV.
Shaquille, question for you. And I'm sorry, I'm just trying to figure this out. How do we know that that's what the walrus was doing? Did the walrus announce that that's what he was doing, and did we just assume that that's what the walrus was doing?
Well, Nick,
are you coming to Scarborough Fair?
I don't want Nick to have a go at me afterwards, and I don't want to have any more strikes. I won't show you the video on air, but I'm more than happy to show you the uncensored video after we get off the airwaves. And for our viewers, feel free to Google it yourself. The video's out there.
By the way, that was a newsworthy event for 2023.
I don't care.
See, now I'm a 2-ton beast, and I don't see anything that I do in my bedroom get put.
If you go to Sydney Harbour Bridge or Scarborough Fair and you start doing stuff like that, Shaquille, we'll bring the press out and we'll see. You'll go viral.
Please do, yeah.
You'll go viral. You will. Yeah.
Chris, you were talking about before about.
I'm glad I came on the air to listen to that. I mean, I waited all week.
I wanted to make sure that the year went off.
Made my year. Oh wow, man, Shaquille, I can't outdo that. I mean,
Did you miss me there?
I don't.
Yeah. Whoa, Shaquille. Whoa.
Let everybody enjoy that instead of the other thing. That's
man, I got
nobody would have noticed they'd just done the fireworks.
Well, I've learned yesterday, and I don't know what y'all think about this, but we have these various shows, including a couple that I do and everything, and one that we did yesterday. There was actually a sex therapist who is also a life coach, and she claims that, and I've done some studies, and she might be right, that there is a rise in polygamy within the society.
A rise in polygamy. I just thought I'd throw that out there. There was a rise in polygamy, but rise. You're right. Yes. I just thought I'd throw that out there.
That's not called polygamy.
Good one, Mark.
What that's called is a bunch of young people acting like tarts, right? Whether they're male or female, acting like tarts, right? Going, we're just going to do whatever the hell we like,
Tots?
whenever we want, right?
What's a tot?
These are the same young people that'll have a crack at the sort of Orthodox Church of Latter-day Saints, the Muslims, and some of the other religious groups that believe in polygamy. Oh, no, they can't possibly do that. It's oppressive. But when they do it, it's an expression of sexuality. Let's have another fireworks display.
Well, speaking of things that are done in that respect and everything, I said I was going to get to some of these crazy laws that were passed and everything. One of them was that in Tennessee, and I've got one for North Carolina. You'll love this one, Nick, and everything. But in Tennessee, bar bouncers, I'm thinking they would already be trained in this, Chris. You used to be involved in a lot of things dealing with data and security and things of that nature. But in Tennessee, bar bouncers must be trained in de-escalation and self-restraint techniques, along with emergency first aid and CPR. One, how you require this, and should any bar bouncer already be trained in that? It seems to me that should already be something that would already be there.
Well, I have a suggestion. Maybe the police should be trained in de-escalation. Seriously.
Whoa!
Like, I know Lee, because I don't think you were here last year.
The taser out.
The year before, when I was going on about this, I am no fan of the police department in any country. Right, but certainly in Western countries, I don't like the institution. I don't like the way that they act. I don't like the fact that when they do something wrong, they go running to the police unions. I think that Black Lives Matter has a point. I just don't agree with the way that they went around making that point. I think look, why wouldn't I have a problem with the police? I'm pretty anti-government in the first place. I don't like the tax department because they're an agency of the government, and I don't like the police because they're a representative agency of the government. So, I absolutely think that they should maybe be taught in how to de-escalate things, rather than going.
Shaquille, you're gonna love this. Shaquille, you're gonna love this one because there had to be some great laws coming from the West and from the bastions of the liberal area as well. I'm gonna actually pick on one now because I may be a liberal or progressive, whatever term y'all want to use. I can have fun with my people as well. But in California, a state known for its hiking and walking and all of that, and all these states have this rule and everything. But they are saying it's best to look both ways before you cross the street. But apparently in California, jaywalking is no longer a crime. So you can jaywalk all day long. And that's what California was too busy paying attention to and everything, whether you can or cannot jaywalk in California or Oakland or down there in the area where the big trees are and all of that. So they're going to pay attention.
You've got people lining the streets of Venice Beach and actually the beachfront itself. And all over California, I might just pick on Venice Beach, but all over California with needles hanging out of their arms that are shitting in the streets, right? That are walking through the cars. The police are under-resourced to deal with jaywalking, of all things, in California. When was the last time someone was charged with jaywalking in New York? I mean, it's just not going to happen. And these crimes are not even crimes. Go away. Leave us alone. That's what the government needs to do. Leave us alone.
No, I think that's a great idea and everything. I was hoping that Nick would be back because I was really having one that was for.
I was checking downstairs to see if Shaquille's comments made it through.
Oh, there's Nick.
Yeah, and they did. So I'm sitting there going I can't pull it back. It's all live TV. His love affair with walruses in United Kingdom. I can't do anything about that.
Hey, listen.
Nick, that was for you.
This was a news article that I read out. Okay, and right. I know that American censors, in the interest of freedom.
Well, I mean, it certainly is newsworthy.
But this is a real live story, right? The political left is about an animal, right? I don't know why the political left isn't sitting there. There's so many ways they could spin this. One, they could spin it and say, what a huge step forward for the feminist walrus movement. This walrus was left alone by himself. He couldn't find a mate.
Was it him or her?
He's a male. Or the animal rights people saying, look at what climate change has done. This poor walrus there by himself. I mean, there's all sorts of ways the left could spin this.
Yeah, it could have. Yeah.
Hey, Nick, I got one for you, though, because they're headed into the fourth year of the pandemic. We are in the fourth year of the pandemic. North Carolina did come out with a law. It says that its governor, that being the governor that is currently here, Roy Cooper, cannot declare an extended state of emergency without the approval of other high-ranking state officials. So he's got to actually go get permission from the rest of the folks in order for him to actually do another extended emergency state.
That's a good idea. That's a good idea.
You know?
So I have on my screen. Oh, sorry, Lee. Go ahead.
Just remove it from the executive branch. Let the legislator declare an emergency.
So I just wanted to point out that according to New York City, there's a racial bias. So in jaywalking, and that from January 1st to March 31st of 2020, 78 of 79 tickets for jaywalking, 99% went to Black or Hispanics. According to NYC Open Data, they even have the race there, and you can see there's a lot of Black and Black Hispanic and white Hispanic, and I just thought I'd point that out. Data never ever lies, ever.
Yes, it does.
Shaquille, it never lies. What's wrong with you?
Racial awareness.
What is the race of the officers that wrote these tickets?
Were they like the
wow, that's Shaquille. Now you're bringing in this confounding factor here.
Let me tell you something, right? I know police departments pretty well. I used to train police officers. I know police departments very, very well, right? These are the people that'll walk into court and they'll say, or the police commissioner or whatever the equivalent is, whatever the equivalent is in your country. They'll walk up, they'll say, look, we don't make the laws, we just enforce them. But when we feel like it, we have discretion.
Oops.
That's right. There is discretionary powers. That's right.
We just want people, members of the public, to take responsibility. If you've done something wrong, take responsibility.
Yeah, just tell us.
When you're in a police interview, be a man. Will you man up and tell us the truth about what you did? But when the police get in any trouble, is any responsibility taken? Oh, no. The job was too stressful. They're under too much pressure. There's all these different things that they're going through, blah, blah. And then if you happen to catch them dead to rights, you've got them absolutely dead to rights. There's no way out of it. Mr. Officer, you were off duty. You showed your badge and you shot that guy in the head, right? And that guy happened to be your brother. Why did you do that? What do the police officers do? They will, one, not say a bloody word. They won't say anything because they know the system. They'll ask for a lawyer. And then if they happen to have done something on duty, what do? They'll run straight to the police union. Then the police union will come out and they'll say, oh, look, the officer had such a high-stress job. All these times and he got free drinks at McDonald's. It stressed him out, the sugar content, whatever. Right? They'll come with all these different excuses. Yeah. There is never any responsibility taken by the police department. And I'll tell you what this jaywalking thing is. I'm not in New York. I'm going to go out on a limb. I'll tell you what this is. This is because a couple of police officers, not a couple, police officers, have seen people or interacted with people that they don't like. And they've wanted to get them on something, but they didn't have anything to get them on. So they've gone, oh, look, he put his foot on the roadway before the man turned green, right? So let's get him for jaywalking. That way we can pat him down, we can see if he's got drugs, etc., etc. That is still how they act. That is still how they carry on. That is exactly what the police department does everywhere.
Shaquille,
your problem with that is?
I got a question for you.
My problem with that is that police officers should not use their authority or power to go on personal vendettas. And if they're going to, then members of the public should be able to do the same thing. They are not a power onto their own. They're abusing the system, and any police officer who wants to charge anybody can look through the hundreds and thousands of pages of rules and regulations and laws that are on the books in order to pick on somebody. And that is an absolute affront to liberty. And people in America, frankly, of any country, people in America should realize that their liberties have been usurped by a judicial system and a legislative system that has made everything illegal. Where's your pursuit of happiness? Where's your liberty?
And an executive. You forgot the executive.
I can answer that question. The pursuit of happiness is to become a lawyer. Then you'll be happy, Shaquille, because you'll be on the right side.
Oh my God!
I've never met a happy lawyer yet.
You'll be on the right side of the system rather than the wrong side of the system.
Shaquille and Nick, I got a question to ask both of y'all, because I used to hear this notion, and I've heard it in different places, including on college campuses.
I just want to ask, are you to tell me that the three Democrats that are on here are now all of a sudden in love with the police? that I'm the only person that thinks
No, I was going to ask something about the police.
agencies should be
If you
reformed,
let me finish
that
the
police
question,
officers
because
should have
one of the things that I've heard
I'm the only
about
one there, 'cause I
the
haven't heard any support from you.
If they arrest Santos, yes, I'm in favor of the police. Santos should be in jail for fraud. He's the only guy I know that has actually committed election fraud.
Well, he's been referred to the federal ethics committee. So we'll see we'll see how that works. I think they're gonna sanction him. So
jumping up and saying indict him.
Chris and Nick,
I've heard
one question
it
I've
all
asked
now.
over years,
The federal ethics committee, as if there is something ethical that the federal government is going to be able to enforce.
I'm sorry. That's like saying That's like saying jumbo shrimp or military intelligence. I get it. I get it.
Well,
You know.
got
it.
I mean, let's get
Hey,
real.
Chris, and the question I've got to ask is, are there still quotas? Because I remember we were talking about jaywalking. There used to be quotas, and there would be a time in a certain season that police would literally go after jaywalkers because they hadn't met their quotas. So I'm wondering, do those quotas still exist in that sense? And it was a quota of arrest that they needed to make and everything. And I remember hearing that like years ago and decades ago. But
I asked a police officer about that. A local guy. I said, "You guys have like quotas, monthly quotas, and everything." He says, "You know, Chris, that is urban legend. There are no quotas that we have to meet. There are no. What happens is that we get somebody who complains about speeding along a road, and that complaint comes into the chief's office. Then the chief assigns somebody to go out there and patrol those roads and find out, what exactly the speeding aspect is. And they'll put up a warning thing that, this little lit sign that says, "Hey, watch your speed. Here's your speed right now. Watch it," type thing. And they'll put that up for about a week, and then they'll put a radar gun up. So, I mean, it's not like they just throw somebody out there and say, "Okay, we're going to do this at the end of the month." And the thing is, it just happens to coincide with complaints from those people. So, and I'm okay with that, especially if they got kids.
Chris, you just used the term that I don't think you're allowed to use, because you just called something lit. I thought that was like a use term.
So that's at the moment. Police departments have had quotas. Police departments all over the Western world have had quotas, right? And so it's nothing's different in America. You guys
got to
have
make
quotas
their money.
there. It may not be.
They got to make them money.
It may not be happening right now, but they have had them.
Yeah.
Okay. And even if they had quotas, Mark, that wouldn't be the reason for this. There's no way that all but one person was white and it wasn't fueled by something. I'm not going to say it was fueled by racism, but there is something that happened that caused that to happen, right? So, I would say it's probably overzealous policing in areas that are majority.
Shaquille, is it possible they're only doing that in black neighborhoods?
That's what I just said, Lee. That's what I just said. Yeah, it's possible that there's overzealous policing in black areas. That's what I would say. But Chris, you say you don't have a problem with that because of speeding in areas where there's kids and blah blah blah. Look, that sounds fine. If you're doing 100 mile an hour, fine. Okay, maybe somebody should try and stop you. But we've had this in Australia where the speed limit's been dropped to 40 kilometers an hour. Okay, now there's talk of dropping it to 30. Some places are talking about dropping it to 20. Wow. And what they're talking about is if you're doing 5 kilometers over the speed limit, right, which is about 2.5, 3 miles, we'll say. 3 miles over the speed limit.
Yep.
You're going to get a fine. So what happened? Did the rates of accidents go up or did they go down? Well, they went up because what happened was all the parents dropping their kids off to school were looking at their speedometers instead of looking at the road. And they end up getting more children. Okay? So do you think the government said, we might have got that a little wrong. Let's end that. No, of course not. Of course not. Because, the government's never wrong. No responsibility taken. So this is the thing. You might think that it's a good idea to lower the speed limit in areas, but if it doesn't work and it's not having the effect that you want it to have, where's the personal responsibility from government? Like, they tell the rest of us to have personal responsibility. Where's their personal responsibility?
Look at Shaquille, I'm going to get myself in trouble probably with the women and everything else and other folks, but should there be personal responsibility? I know Lee's a big fan of personal responsibility. Also, when we see people that are literally using and texting on their phones when they're driving, I'm not a driver, but I do know that exists. And also when women and definitely sometimes even men will be grooming themselves as they're driving as well. So should we be trying to regulate that as well? Because you can literally drive down in Durham and see people doing all kinds of stuff that you would think the daggone car was a bathroom.
Well, I wouldn't want to see that walrus driving. Let me tell you, no, not in a million years.
It's right, Chris. Have you driven in New York? He's probably a better driver than most of them up there.
Probably, yeah.
Mark, let me tell you, we've got this now in Australia, right? You can't use your phone in the car, even if you're stopped at traffic lights. Why? The lights are turned red. Why can't I jump on my phone? What's the problem? So what have they done? They've put cameras up that look inside your car, right, that are then scanned and reviewed using AI. Then they send it to an actual police officer to detect whether or not you're on your mobile phone. Really?
Wow.
Do you want to put a camera in my bedroom? Maybe they will start putting fireworks up after they see what I get up to in there. I mean,
hey, maybe they will do that. Hey, I got one more. We got about 5 minutes to go. I thought she was going to pop in from DC.
Go away. Go back in your little box. Sit there in your little Capitol buildings. Call yourself honorables and all the rest of it. Okay. Pat yourselves on the back and just continue to do nothing. Okay. More. Those 7 deadly sins. I think more sloth is what's required amongst our politicians.
Well,
speaking of walruses, I'm liking the animal reference and everything, but I do have a quick question because I was going to get to one other part of those new laws and everything. Because, there's been a push and it's been a discussion we've had even here on the network around the need or non-need for $15 an hour wages. And apparently at least 8 million workers in almost 24 states are getting a raise of either 23 cents or $1.50 an hour beginning this week, according to the Economic Policy Institute, because they're going to get up to that inflation adjusted rate of $15. I don't know many people that can actually make it off of $15, but that's just my own personal idea and everything. It probably needs to be higher, but that's just an idea. But I'm wondering about your walrus. If the walrus was here in the state with the people that would having to quarantine and get the walrus, would they be worth the $15 an hour? Because I'm thinking that they might need to get paid a lot of money in order to try to commandeer that big walrus.
No, Mark. No,
I don't even.
Because in other Western
back in the walrus. Oh my God!
In other Western countries, the wages are higher because our workers are actually better educated.
It's a blubber.
Horrible way that the students coming out of American universities and colleges and high schools are educated. So that's why they justify the higher wages. You see. Now, Dan, you're a former university professor, or university dean. Is it walruses or is it walry? Like cactus and cacti. Is it walry? Is that what we should be saying?
Shaquille, I don't care.
But Dan, do you care whether they get paid enough? Because apparently California, Washington State, and Massachusetts, hey, those are 3 of those liberal states and everything, are at or above the $15 an hour level, as are Washington, D.C. and New York. Oh, wait a minute. Those are liberal states again.
We shouldn't have to pay walrus. They should do what they do for free.
The walrus is going to work for free?
Yeah, that's it.
The walruses are working for free. I'm liking this idea. So we're going to actually
fish, and fish.
Yeah, exactly. It's sort of like
just some raw fish. Just
walrus aren't food. I don't know if anybody eats walrus. Who knows?
Dan, you're not going to give it a go.
We can give it a go. I'm sure.
Use the blubber as fuel. That'll get rid of the oil thing. I don't have to worry about that. That's biofuel, isn't that? Isn't that biofuel?
That would be biofuel. That would solve the whole problem, and it would definitely.
We've got a whole new industry popping up already. Yep. Mark, to the question that you've sort of alluded to, this $15 an hour nonsense. Let the free market determine it. If people don't like the $15 an hour, don't work. Biden will give you money to stay home. Don't work. That'll drive wages up. The employers that want to employ you and think that you're worth it will increase their wages, or they'll go out of business. That's what the unions did, and I think it's a fantastic idea. Then you can push all your jobs across to places with cheaper labor, like China, and then complain that they've become really powerful after your industrial economy is left in tatters. I think that's fantastic.
But Shaquille, you missed the story yesterday. It was actually on Economics Monday. You weren't there, but we've actually found out that China also has the problem of some of their workers not wanting to necessarily work or be in that whole environment. Kind of like the complaint about our U.S. workers that the places can't find workers for their jobs. And apparently that was also coming out of China, that some of the Chinese companies, for whatever reasons, whether it's manufacturing or whatever, doing their COVID policy, they also were having a hard time finding workers.
There's
even in
a
the
Because
country.
China's relatively expensive to manufacture in now. A lot of Chinese people don't buy Chinese goods. They get those goods manufactured in places like Bangladesh and other places where labor costs are cheaper. But the major thing, the point that I was trying to highlight there is what I said late last year. When you have unions that say that there's going to be all these health and safety regulations, and you've got diversity regulations, affirmative action, etc., plus a high minimum wage, all you do is you drive those jobs offshore because the people aren't prepared to pay for goods that are produced at those higher price points, right? Those higher price points have to be there to cover all of these extra costs, and the people don't want to pay it. What the people want is those really cheap goods that are provided by people that don't have to abide by union rules and by these high wages and diversity and all that. They want goods at that price, but they also want for themselves the higher wage. Well, it doesn't work like that.
You know, like I said, there can be different interesting conversations around that. I'm still trying to get over the fact, because I'm going to do some more work again this year with Measurement, that testing company, and they require a college degree for basically rubric work. And I'm going like, hey, that sounds good, and that's a requirement, but it's also something I'm going like, why are we requiring a college degree when high school kids could do this as well? But that's just my own personal opinion, but that's what they want to require, and that's what they put as one of the requirements. So sometimes those rules and regulations can be interesting as well, because I'm like, wait a minute, so you're teaching folks a rubric, somebody even a high school or a non-college grad could learn the rubric, but you want to make it mandatory that they be college grads, and then you're going to pay them a wager that is
got to do something with the college grads.
But that's true. There's some people that are wondering what the whole purpose of college is, and we could have a whole discussion around that.
There is none.
One of the other shows.
There is none. There's no purpose of college.
Well, that's actually what the young lady said. There was the sex coach, and the other thing she said that college is basically a tool that is not really educating. So that's one of the things that Miss Casey said, along with the Rob.
Well, we're past the hour, but I'll leave you with this. I will leave you with this thought, in line with our walrus story.
Yes.
And talking about sex. Okay, you can learn stuff in academics, right? But there's nothing like real world experience, right? So you can sit there and learn everything that there is to know about sex. You can even practice a lot in a laboratory, right? As much as you want on your own. But until you've had the real thing, it's not the same. So until you've had real life experience, it's just not the same, no matter what your university professor tells you.
Well, I hear you. We're going to on that note, and on one other note, I'm going to add to that. Apparently, in the public domain, we're loving our public domain movies. A movie came out that now is in the public domain, but apparently within this movie, I wish I could think of the title, but it begins with a K. There was a notion, because it just joined the public domain, that we would literally be finding our spouses through vending machines. That was actually the theme of the movie. So literally you would put in a quarter and the wife would come out, and that was like a science fiction movie that came out. It is now in the public domain. So Nick, Lee, what do you think if you had been after?
Wait a minute, the wife would come out of the vending machine?
The wife would come out of the vending machine. Yes, the wife, your spouse would come out of the vending machine.
There?
Huh?
This is a whole machine full of women or men or whatever it is.
Lee, I think it's brilliant. Imagine everyone's wife in the same vending machine. You'd just leave them in there. You wouldn't put a quarter in, would you? You'd leave them in there for a while.
I won't touch that one with a 10-foot walrus.
It's all right. You guys are married. I'm not, so it's all right. I can say it.
Yeah, well, I'm single too, but I'm sitting there going like, wait a minute, that would be interesting. I'm gonna try to.
I don't think that would be such a good idea.
Yeah.
Well, we already have online dating, these different sites and stuff like that match, matchmakers. You
So
put in all
in some variation, it is what's happening. But
when you're at
Like
school,
Carvana.
but when you're at school and like you're trying to buy a packet of chips or some lollies or something, and you put a coin in it and you see that there's like one that's sort of hanging and you get like the extra one, and you're trying to get to it. So could that happen, Mark, with this machine? Like, could you see there's like one chick dangling by her foot or something, and you sort of put a coin in, you get two chicks for the price of one, double the trouble?
I found the article, so I'm just going to bring it up really quickly and everything. Then we are going to
Mark?
The list of movies that are now in the public domain include Metropolis, Putting Pants on Philip, what a title of a movie, Nevada, Spring Fever, My Best Girl, Get Your Man, and King of Kings. But this person that wrote the article said they were particularly taken with No Man's Land, which gives top billing to a horse, Rex the Wonder Horse. And they were also, if you could, or we can time travel with Coco the Clown in Coco in 1999, where they apparently thought that at the turn of the last century, everything would happen via automation, and you get a wife from a vending machine for 25 cents.
And
There's
then
so
what
much,
happens if you don't
so much
just
talk
fight?
about sex and wives that Nick's come back to join us.
Oh, no, I'm come back to join it. I got Russia, China, Ukraine waiting, guys. We got to
We got to go.
Out of here.
You got to go. I got Russia, China waiting. So
Yeah, more
please,
things important
and
than walruses.
you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
We're out of here.
Take care.
Take care.